In this video, we will calculate slope using 2 points and the slope formula. Last time we looked at slope using rise over run by counting how far we rose and how far we ran from one point to another. But let's see if we can make a formula. And what if we aren't given a graph? What if we're just given the set of coordinates? And what if the points on the graph aren't perfect? So we have to think of a different way. This isn't the only way to figure out what the slope is. So let's take a look at different types of slope first. As we read our graphs from left to right, notice that this line is increasing. So we call this positive slope. As we read the graph from left to right here, this graph is falling, so we say it has a negative slope. Here, for a zero slope, notice we have zero rise between points A and B. So if we were to count rise over run, the rise would be 0 over a run of 4. 0 divided by 4 would be 0. An undefined slope. Here from A to B we would rise 3, but we have no run from left to right. So we would have a rise of 3 divided by a run of 0, and 3 divided by 0 is undefined. Looking at this graph, we can tell right away that there's going to be a positive slope. So we know after we get our answer that our slope should be positive. So we're going to try to use the coordinates to find the rise and the run. First, let's go back and calculate the rise and the run just by counting. So we're rising 5, we're running 7. So our slope should be 5 over 7, because that's our rise over our run. But if we were to use the coordinates for this point are -7, -3. The coordinates for this point are 0 and 2. How could we find the rise by using the coordinates? Which values are affected by the rise? Well, rise is a vertical movement, and the vertical values are the y values. So y values are the vertical values, so we will use the y values of the coordinates to find the rise. So the y values of the coordinates are -3 and 2. So we could find 5 by subtracting 2 minus a -3 gives us a positive 5. How could we find the run of 7? Well, running is a horizontal motion. The horizontal values are our x values. So we can use the 0 and the -7 to find the run. 0 minus -7 is equal to positive 7. From this, we can develop a formula. We can use our coordinates to find the slope. The rise is affected by the y values. The run is affected by the x values. So we can use those coordinates in a formula to find the slope. We know from this that if we want to find the slope from A to B, we could use the coordinates 2 and -3, which are the y coordinates of the point, to find the rise. We know that 0 and -7 can be used to find the run. Notice how if I started with the 2 on the top, I needed to start with the 0 on the bottom. The -3 is on the top and -7 is on the bottom. That gave us our slope of 5 over 7 that we can verify with that rise and run. So if we're given sets of points, x1, y1, and x2, y2, all this notation means is this is our first point and this is our second point. We can use the coordinates to find the slope, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Let's take a look at another example. So on the coordinate plane, if we want to go from 2, 3 to 8, 6 and find the slope of this line, We know already that our slope should be positive because we can see that this line is increasing from left to right. So the points 2, 3, and 8, 6, if we use the formula, we use the y values to find the rise. So we can start with 6 minus 3. Those are the two y values from the points. To find the run, we have 8 minus 2, which is our horizontal distance. So our rise over our run is 3 over 6, which simplifies to 1/2. So we know this line has a slope of positive 1/2. We can also verify that with our rise and our run. Our rise is 3, our run is 6. Now that was starting from the point 2, 3 to 8, 6. What if we wanted to go the other way? We would have a rise of negative 3 and a run of negative 6. We would still get negative 3 over negative 6, which is a positive 1/2. Does the formula work the same way if we switch the points as well? Well, notice if I start with the 3 on top, starting with this point, I have to start with the 2 on the bottom so that I still get my negative 3 over negative 6, which is positive 1/2. So it doesn't matter which set of points you start with, but once you pick one, you have to stick with picking that point first. So if we pick the 6 to go first, then we have to pick the 8 to go first on the bottom. All right, the next few problems are on your own problems. Make sure you graph these lines so that you have these perfect points to be able to do the slope formula. This is the next example for line LM. The next example, line PN or NP. And the last example for line QR.